Hey guys, we're back on one of my favorite trails, Rancho Palos Verdes, Southern California. Tons of open space, beautiful beaches down there, and we're looking at an awesome bike. Really love this. This is the BULLS E-STREAM EVO AM 27.5, which denotes the 650B 27.5 inch tires here, and they're by 2.8, so these are plus size. It does have boost hub spacing, really nice fork. This is Fox 36 float rhythm, 36 millimeter black anodized stanchions. We got Fox back here as well, 150 millimeters of travel, so this is an all-mountain electric bike. Really good weight distribution, really clean battery integration, and I love the motor. This is the Brose S Mag. Up to 90 newton meters of torque, really smooth because it has the Gates carbon belt drive inside. It's not just gears right on each other. About 6.39 pounds for that thing. Really just narrow Q factor, compact size. Bosch has really been making some big moves in recent years with their new 4th gen motors. So we're looking at the Bosch Performance Line CX, directly competitive with the Brose S Mag. This one has a slightly larger Q factor, 175 millimeters. It weighs 6.3 pounds, so it shaves off that 0.09 pounds. Really compact, beautiful, maybe a little bit louder with the Bosch. Although the S Mag does produce more noise than some of the other, just not quite as off-road oriented Brose drive systems. There was like the T, and they have a speed motor as well. I really like how fluid this motor is. It just ramps up really smoothly. It's measuring similar things as Bosch, rear wheel speed, and BULLS does a really good job with their magnet. They have like a little sensor back there, and then the magnet's actually mounted onto the disc brake rotor. So it's clean. It doesn't have like one of those spoke magnets that can get bumped out of place. There's no sensor down there on the left chainstay that can get bumped out of place. It measures pedal cadence, pedal torque. It offers up to 410% assist or feedback, whereas Bosch, I think it tops out at 340. They say 75 newton meters of torque. These guys say 90 newton meters of torque. You can climb all these trails with both of these bikes. When you're like me, I weigh 135 pounds, and I'm a pretty active rider, but they're both very capable. You can kind of like wheelie up if you want to. Tons of fun. Some of the other differences here is this has a really high capacity battery pack, 750 watt hours, 37.5 volts, 20 amp hours, compared to Power Pack, or rather Power Tube, because it's integrated. Bosch has two sizes now. They have the 500 and a new 625. So we're talking about significant capacity increase here. It's BMZ batteries. The interface isn't quite as slick as Bosch, and unfortunately we don't have the key, so I'm not going to be able to show you, but you would normally unlock it right here. I don't like that it's on the non-drive side, because that's the side you lay the bikes down, unless, I was purposely laying that on the wrong side so you could see the kind of the iconography and the naming on the side of the motor casing there. Normally you'd want to lay it on this side where the disc brakes are versus the derailleur, because it's much more sensitive. So the fact that the key port is on the left hand side of the bike here, that's not the ideal situation. Also, the charging port way down here, right, versus up high. So Bosch has done a good job in both cases. They put it up high, easier to reach, and on, again, the drivetrain side. So it's neat to kind of differentiate between these two things. This battery pack weighs 8.2 pounds versus the 625. That thing comes in at 7.7. So we're talking about half a pound of difference for a pretty big capacity increase. Again, 625 up to 750. So it's nice to get that extra power, especially if you're climbing a lot. Maybe you just want to ride further. It's nice to be able to tap into that. When you unlock the battery, this one just kind of like falls all the way out. So you want to have your hand there to catch it, versus Bosch kind of has that like half step, and then there's a button, helps it get the rest of the way out. And I've heard reliability wise, if you're dropping this one, it might not be quite as durable as the Bosch power tubes, and that comes directly from dealers and customers leaving comments and stuff like that. This is a new generation of batteries from BMZ. BULLS does a great job with all their shops, and they've got a good warranty. I think it's 2 years on the drive unit, 4 years on the battery, and then 5 years on the frame. That's pretty significant. 4 frame sizes. Again, nice hardware. We're talking about Fox and everything. One of the other upgrades here, you can see these Shimano Dior XT tool-free adjustable reach on the brake levers. We've got 203 millimeter hydraulic disc brakes, ICE-Tech rotors, Dior XT quad piston caliper. Really nice. Just extra grab, extra power, better surface area. It's going to give you a mechanical advantage over these bigger wheels and larger, wider tires, heavier, basically. So we're talking about the weight. Weighed this earlier, 56.5 pounds, and we are looking at the 49 frame size, which is good for me. Sometimes they kind of have the medium or the medium small, and this one I was able to raise the seat post a little bit by feeding through that dropper cable down here, just kind of shoving it in there, because otherwise if you pull up it can disconnect, and then you got to try to reconnect it and get everything set up again. So Joaquin was helping me with that earlier. I appreciate it, buddy. And we were able to raise this 30.9 millimeter seat post, and this is from a new company. It's Limotech, and it's called the Jovial. Okay, and it comes in like 75, it's like 100, 125, or 150 depending on the frame size. So it's all kind of set up there. You know, 0 degree rise right here on this Monkey Link stem versus one that has a 7-degree rise and it's a little bit longer. So they set these up well. They adjust the parts that are going to help it be larger. If you're a taller person, you're going to have longer reach and stuff. Although I think they all have 165 millimeter FSA crank arms, so you don't get the pedal strikes when you're pedaling. There is quite a bit of travel here. After all. So for me, it's just neat to see those little upgrades, whether it's the disc brakes, the drive system. Maybe it's just been refined a little bit, but it's kind of the same as last year. We got the Monkey Link magnetic bottle cage adapter here, and you don't have to use this. You could take this off and use a side mounted cage. Their bottles are kind of expensive because of this fancy interface, but again, you don't have to do it. They also have the optional Monkey Link headlight, which you can aim up and down. There's a screw on the bottom, lets you do that. And then the rear light, there's just one LED, but it's positioned really well. And I think there's also a fender option that you could use. So I like that Bulls is shipping with those. It gives you a nice option. That's the same as last year, but the drivetrain, this is where we start getting into some of those other upgrades. We have the E-13 plastic guide right there, so you're not going to drop the chain, although we do have narrow wide Megatooth 34 tooth chainring from FSA. And then in the rear, Dior XT with the one-way clutch. You can click it in the up position to tighten the chain a little bit. It won't like bounce around as easily when you're on off-road terrain or going fast in a descent, but you can turn that off when you do rear wheel service. Now last year we had quick release up front. We didn't have it in the rear. This year they have it in the rear as well, which I appreciate. Makes trail maintenance a little bit easier. 12 millimeter through axle boost, 148 millimeter hub spacing boost up front, 110 millimeter, 15 millimeter through axle. So really nice stuff. The rims are kind of the same. They're eccentric, Bulls branded, and they're asymmetric. So just kind of interesting. I think the spokes up there are 14 gauge, 13 gauge in the rear to support extra weight. Just a nice setup. And then these tires, of course, Hans Dampf from Schwalbe, Evo, APX TLA. These are tubeless ready rims, and they come with the tape and the valve stem, so you can convert very easily. Adex Speed Grip, that's another just kind of a brand thing. It's talking about the softness of the rubber. There is another Bulls bike. Do you remember which one it was that had a different front tire?
It was the Copperhead.
Copperhead, yeah.
Copperhead.
Is that it right there? Yeah, this is it. So it's kind of neat to see Magic Mary. This one has a soft Adex up front and like a slightly different tread pattern. It's a bit wider. I'm going to give you a bit more grab. This is also an all-mountain bike with 150 millimeter travel. It just has the Bosch setup. And I think this one does have the 625 power tube, right?
That one does have the 625.
So these are pretty comparable. $62.99 for this one, and I think that one was like $57.99 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit cheaper if you wanted to go with Bosch. It seems like the favorite from, at least from new bikes, I haven't test ridden this and really, spent as much time as I'd like in terms of testing durability. And you heard me comment on the battery. Yeah, it's higher capacity, but Bosch seems to be a bit more durable. But a lot of people really like this drive unit, me included. I really like it. I've competed them back to back. It's smooth. It's ramps up really nicely. It's powerful. Yeah, there's not a lot to dislike about it. And now that they switched, they used to have Kind Shock seat post dropper. This one, it actually has a little bit of, it's kind of like a suspension element to it. Not very much, just a little bit of give, but it actually takes the edge off of some of those bigger hits. And of course you have this long travel suspension too, so it's not like completely necessary, but that is a nice little upgrade that they've done. It's got a nice dropper lever too. It really sculpted. It feels nice. And then Dior XT triggers. This is another little upgrade. It's almost like a little rubber pad right there. We've got a 2-way high shifter and then 4-step click, 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 low. So you can dump a bunch of gears, which is great if you're like going into a climb. Just don't push real hard because this drive unit does not have shift detection like Bosch. It's very sensitive. If you just ease off on the pedal torque a little bit, the motor will back off too, and that's when you want to change gears. Otherwise, you're going to be putting 90 newton meters of torque into that chain, into the sprockets back there, and potentially bending the teeth or breaking your chain or something like that. It hasn't happened to me. I think I'm a pretty thoughtful, conscious rider, but I wanted to be clear on that being a trade-off, whereas Bosch does have the shift detection feature. Really no one else at this level does. Shimano, Yamaha, Brose. There is a Bafang drive unit that does, but it's kind of like you have to order it separately, and then there's a physical shift detection, and it's just not nearly as smooth or seamless as Bosch. So for me, you know, again, this bike is great if you know how to ride it properly and if you're thoughtful about it. And I just want to point out here, of course, we have compression adjust on both of these, and then there's rebound down here and on the rear, and they're air, so you can sag this to your body weight and just set this up perfectly. Normally there would be like a little rubber pad on the bottom of the battery, but there's an aluminum alloy casing, so it feels pretty durable. And then there's another aluminum alloy skid plate versus on the Bosch drive, they've got kind of a plastic skid plate and a plastic cover on the battery. Okay, so down here we got a little bit of rake, kind of brings that front wheel out a bit. And you can dial this in. See that little gear right there? You can set it so the quick release lever is pointing up. You don't ever want that pointed forwards or down because it could snag on sort of trail debris. And you can see today we've got all these thorny bushes and stuff, so we really want to avoid those as we're riding. And then here is the charger. So I love that they're using the Rosenberger magnetic interface, but this thing is a monster. 1.9 pounds compared to 1.7 pounds on the Bosch charger. It's a little bit faster, 4.5 amps versus 4 amps on the Bosch charger. And I like that you can unplug this end of it, just like Bosch. It's not the worst. My least favorite charger is the one that I sometimes see from Yamaha. It's just huge and you can't unplug the wall side. And I think it's just a bother when you want to put it in a backpack or something like this. But these days with such high capacity batteries and like range estimates and stuff, they do pretty well. Can I hand this off to you, Joaquin?
Definitely.
So coming back to the bike, batteries in it, it's charged up, getting ready to go. We got the blocks display right here, power button on top, and it's transflective. It is backlit, so there's a little button right here you can press, and it should activate the lights. I don't know if that's there. Yep, they were active. Look at that. That's cool. It's got that nice side cutout, so you're going to be visible. I always think of this as like you're riding to the trail to ride, and now you're not going to get all tuckered out, and on the way home, you cruise up the hills or whatever. These things work great on paved streets, although if they're a little bit damp, you don't want to slide out. But getting to the trail, and then you don't have to put the rack on your car. If you're one of the lucky people that gets to live in one of these amazing places by the coast or whatever, you could just ride everywhere with that high capacity battery. Worst case, you have a backpack and you toss the charger in. Okay, now this display, there's room for improvement. There's like 5 bars on the battery infographic, 20% steps, current speed in miles per hour, and we've got a little time up at the top. We can the light button is on this side, but we can also cycle through. Whoops, accidentally turned it off. Oh, it comes on and off really quickly. And then there's this like set button on the other side right there. It's going to change some of the different readouts. There we go, trip meter, total distance. There's no range though. There's no, I think as far as displays go, it leaves a little bit of something to be desired. There's no micro USB port. It's not removable. You can swivel a little bit, but I don't know if is there a Bluetooth app for this one?
So that display is actually Bluetooth compatible. And
It is.
BMC Connect C app is what it's called.
I've never looked at that. Have you?
I looked at it just a little bit. It's to make this display work, you're gonna need a special dongle. So it's something you'll need to purchase from Bulls directly, and
okay,
once you plug it up to your harness, it's plug and play, and you'll be able to use it pretty much Bluetooth compatible with your app. Thank you
very much, Joaquin, and I'm doing my best to be as well versed in this as possible. These are a little bit pre-production, these bikes. They like to get me on them as soon as they can when the season's starting out, but yeah, maybe you could get like a stem cap mount and put your phone right here, but you're going to be draining the battery. It'd be nice if you could tap into that high capacity rechargeable e-bike battery, and it would just be nice to see battery percentage or range estimation or something in this display, which is something that Bosch does really well. And then I think if we hold, I don't know, it might be holding up on this one. Yeah, there it is. There's our walk mode. Really slow right now, and I don't know if that's a setting thing, but it could be useful if you get a flat tire or you're maybe in over your head on some of the technical terrain, down on those cliffs or something. I think that's pretty comprehensive. Joaquin, do you feel like I missed anything? Anything else you want to add?
I think you got pretty much everything with this one, yeah.
Gone through it? Okay, I appreciate that. Of course, chime in if you guys have questions or feedback. Maybe there's something I missed or that you feel like I could be doing better. Like, oh, you were right there. Why didn't you talk about this? Like, help me with that. I'm doing my best. There's a lot to cover on these bikes. I'm getting better over time. I do, you know, I want to recognize they've got this cool little stanchion guard right there, this metal piece. It's going to protect from rocks and things flicking up. I'm not an expert on suspension design. This has been performing pretty well. I don't know. Do you know the suspension design on this? I don't know if it's horse length. There's usually like 4-bar. That's something that I'd like to get a little bit better at. So maybe if you could comment on the suspension. I'm doing some work on that just to try to understand the way these bikes are set up and how it's going to perform on climbing and descending and under braking if we're going to get a lot of squat. I'll try to experiment with that in the ride test. Okay guys, so I'm just going to coast for a minute. I like to do this stability test. Plus size tires work pretty well with no hands, and just absorbing some of the little trail noise. Ugh. And then that dropper post, it's just so nice to have full leg extension. That's something I miss out on frequently. I wanted to do a little bit of climbing back here and show you what that motor looks like. Sweet. Maybe shift gears. You can hear it banging a little bit. Whoop. There we go. About 16 miles per hour heading up this hill. Very good. Yeah, and then right here, just in terms of like riding on technical terrain, being able to pedal gently and have the motor respond in kind and not overwhelm you is very nice. And that's the case even in the highest level of assist, which is 4 blocks right now. We could take it down to 3, 2, or 1, or none, and you could pedal this like a regular bike. It does freewheel without any drag. There's no reduction gearing or anything here. When you pedal backwards, it does not cycle the chainring. And frankly, I wish there was a little bit more resistance, because, I mean, see that? It feels like they've improved it a little bit, but there are a couple times where I've kicked the pedal and it's like spun around and hit me in the shins. Bosch has done a pretty good job at that. Theirs kind of has a clicky, like tick, 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 tick when you're pedaling backwards. Okay, guys, from here you can see that 34-tooth narrow wide chainring with the E-13 keeper. Really nice setup. And then back here, just love the spread. This used to be an 11 speed. Now they've gone to 12, and it's 10 to 51 teeth. So just an incredible climbing gear there. And it's working really well. I like the multi-shift with Shimano. I like the clutch design. This is my preference over SRAM, which a lot of other systems have gone to. You know, good stuff. Maybe it's just tomato or personal preferences, but yeah, it's nice. It's working well for me. I'm going to pedal through in the highest level of assist, and I'm going to go through that steep section of trail with a bunch of rocks and stuff. So this is climbing. You're going to hear the motor more because it's the highest level and because it's working hard. The other thing I like about the Brose system is that it does give you up to 120 RPM support. So the motor doesn't fade out prematurely. Like if you're heading towards a hill and you downshift in preparation, it's not like you're losing motor support, which was the case for some of the older drive units. Bosch is also there at the 120, and now they say greater than 120 for their Gen 4 units. So anyway, here we go. So at the end, I was purposefully backing off a lot on the torque, and you see how the motor just quieted right down. It just matched me perfectly. It never feels like it's overwhelming you or behaving unexpectedly. It's really listening to the torque, the pressure, how much pressure you're putting on those pedals, and so it feels more natural. It feels like you're in control of the bike, even though this weighs maybe a slightly more than the comparable Copperhead with the Bosch motor. I think it feels just excellent. Yeah. Now, let's see here. A little suspension shot on our way down. Gotta outrun the dog. Awesome. Very playful. Yeah. Felt really easy to climb up that, and I was able to do it subtly at first and then accelerate even during the climb. So yeah, the motor's just, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Do you have, you know, you've tried both of these bikes. Is there like a certain type of riding you like to do with one or the other?
I personally like the Brose just because it's a little bit more cadence based. So it requires you to have a little bit more cadence, and also if you're coming from like a traditional bike, that's a little bit easier of a drive unit.
Feels more natural.
More natural, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.